bearing with us, just because we were told that some people were told it was 15:15, but we'll start now, that people were told that they were coming in. So thank you all for joining us today, coming down here. I'm assuming that everybody who's in here today has got a problem with the potholes on their road somewhere. So it's like a self-help group here today. You know, my name's Neil, I'm interested in potholes. So welcome and thank you for coming. I've worked in the highway sector for almost 30 years, Director of ITS UK and the Institute of Highway Engineers. I'm a member of the Institute of Asphalt Technology. I owned a magazine called Highways Magazine for over 20 years, so I come from a journalistic background as well. And I'm actually a consultant now for Kylie Ross, who are the company that have sponsored this particular session today. So thank you for coming along. Quick second or two about Kylie Ross. This gentleman here is Michael Kiley. The business was founded in Birmingham in the 1950s by Michael, who came over from Southern Ireland in the 50s, set up a cattle business. In that period since then, the business has gone on to work not just in the local area, but actually all around the country. They work as far north as the Outer Hebrides, as far south as Devon and Cornwall, and as far east as Anglesey, as far west as Anglesey, as far east as East Anglia. So the business now travels truly nationwide, preventing surface treatment having problems. The family is owned by the family still. The business is still owned by the family still, so it's in its third generation now. And the business is run by Lauren, who's sitting just behind us here with her brother Michael. They're the third generation siblings who now run the business. It's based in the centre of Birmingham in Bordesley Green, and at the peak of the summer period we're employing about 500 or 600 people all around the country, but most of them employed from the West Midlands area as well. So it's a local success story as well for the region. Just to give you a quick run through of how important the road network is, not only to your constituents and your local areas, but also to UK PLC as a whole. We have one client that maintains what's called the strategic road network in the UK, and the strategic road network is the motorways and the main A roads, and that company is called National Highways. It's owned by the government. It used to be the Highways Agency, but it was now put out as a privately owned company. There's one shareholder, that's the government, so we all own National Highways. But what they get is they get a 5-year ring-fence settlement to allow them to maintain the road network properly. And that was because a lot of the capital projects that they were doing were big infrastructure projects, and it was difficult for them to budget and make sure they were getting best value, so that's what they did. But their maintenance programme runs for a 5-year programme as well. But they only have 2% of the road length of the UK in terms of miles. So 98% of the roads are funded annually, which means that every year everyone goes back cap in hand, holding their money hand out to get some coins again for the next year. That's why we're trying to now get a couple of years settlement at least to enable us to do proper preventative maintenance programmes. Of that 2% of road length that National Highways manage, though, it carries 34% of motor traffic in the UK, and it carries 88% of the rest of the road length carry 34%, because these are the minor roads. These are your county roads, your lanes, your rural areas, that type of area, and the rest of the roads are carried by the rest of the county councils. These would be your arterial routes, which just connect all of the main routes through. So you can see that the volume of traffic is actually split quite evenly amongst those three different types of routes, but it's the amount of miles and therefore the size of the asset that people are actually having to manage, which is disproportionate to the local authority environment. And we've obviously got a lot of different bodies involved in the UK, all with their own pots of money, all with their own different priorities, all with their own different topographical or density of population, or it could even be that they're highly rural routes, or they could even be in the North Yorkshire moors, for example. The county of North Yorkshire, just for example, just one county, looks after more miles of roads on its own than National Highways. So it gives you an idea of the scale of how big North Yorkshire is as a county and its asset that it has to run, and it's not getting anywhere near the budget that National Highways get. And as we said, there's no settlements, no annual budgets, and there are different pots that you can go and bid for, but if you don't get that pot of money, you've not won that bid, then you don't get any money, and then your roads deteriorate, and your constituents complain, and then your roads fall apart, and then the cyclists who I met earlier on start going over the handlebars, and then we get into a whole world of pain. So let's look at what we can do to try to prevent that happening in your local area. So what I've done today is I've invited this earnest gentleman alongside me. He is another pothole enthusiast. You are all welcome to join our club. This is Mike. Mike Hansford is the Chief Executive Officer of the RSTA, which is the Road Surface Treatments Association. I'll speak for him until I let him hand over because I've got the clicker. Mike, as I said, is at RSTA. He was at Dorset Council for 29 years managing the road network. So he was actually the asset manager there. He looked at highway systems and data, street works, the routine and structural maintenance of the network that he had to look at. Before leaving, as I said, Mike was the asset manager for the highways. So he was putting together the programme of what happens on his network and the maintenance and strategic plan for it. Mike, if you want to take over.
Yeah, so I was lead, like overarching strategic lead for highways. So I set the strategy, but I was also asset lead for carriageways, footways, also drainage. You talk about lining and non-illuminated signs as well. So I had quite a big remit. And oversaw design as well. So I was chair of the South West Regional Asset Management Group for about 5 or 6 years before I left. And I continued to sit on the UK Roads Leadership Group, the Asset Management Board. So all of these things, we're all looking at strategy and looking at best practice. So, and I am a nerd, and my family will quite happily tell you all about that. But yeah, I'm passionate about what we do because actually I've done some really good things in Dorset that I can back up with evidence. Other authorities have done some very similar things. And what we're looking to do, I'm part of the RSTA. So the RSTA is a not-for-profit trade organisation within the highways industry, and we're looking to share information. We're looking to share best practice. We're looking at learning for local authorities. But coming here today has been really useful because it's that slightly political element. We can have that conversation. Potholes, I'm sure, inquiries fill your inboxes, and you know that in itself sort of tells you just how important this is to the public. So we're here to try and sort of change the narrative from fixing potholes to preventing potholes, and this was a big shift in our strategy in Dorset, which I'm going to talk about a little bit today.
So, for those of you who don't know, I'll just explain what a road is predominantly. A road's made up of a few components. You have a sub-base, which is effectively the structural level. It takes the weight of the vehicles that are travelling on it, and it stops it all collapsing underneath it. Then after that, you will get on it a wearing course. And the wearing course is effectively the part that you sometimes see getting planed off and taken away, and then they put a new wearing course on. And that's made up of bitumen and aggregate. Bitumen is the black sticky stuff that holds it all together, the tar as it used to be called, and the aggregate are the stones. And so what happens is over a period of time, the bitumen is a naturally occurring product from oil, and after a period it will start to oxidise in the environment. That causes the sticky stuff to become brittle, the stones then pop out of it, water gets into that. In the winter, that winter will see the water freeze, which expands, then it pops the stones. Over a period of time with increased traffic, that then causes more stones to pop out until you get what we all know and love, what we're here to celebrate today, the good old English pothole. And what we're looking to do now is explain to you how we stop that from happening. So, Mike, yes, sorry.
To ask a question, is there a right time it takes before we get these lovely potholes, or does it depend on the volume of traffic?
So there's going to be a lot of factors that could affect that, which could be the volumes of traffic, it could be the general environment, it could be how well drained that road is, whether it was the right choice of material in the first place, what type of material has gone down. Lots of different factors can affect, you know, how that road's going to actually perform. So yeah, I mean, the interventions that we're going to talk about, so what we're talking about today is that there's lots of points where we recommend there's like a window of opportunity to apply these treatments that will keep that road in good condition and stop it, you know, developing into a point where it's starting to fail and you see the potholes. So yeah, there are some windows of opportunity for all the treatments we're just going to touch on today. We're not going to get too technical, but we'll give you some information just about what looks like good practice. How can we stop these, you know, roads deteriorating and getting all these potholes that we experience?
And so what Mike talks about, and it's a great analogy, if you buy a brand new car and you drive that car for 50,000 miles and then it breaks down, the one thing you haven't done is what? Service the car. You need to service your car, you need to keep it well oiled, well maintained. Same goes for a road, not that you're thinking. So we talked about the oxidisation process of the asphalt and the bitumen. After about 7 years, something like that, of having a good road down, you can do what's called a preservation treatment on it, which actually reactivates the bitumen to give it back its elasticity to retain the aggregate in. What we do in the UK, budgets, asset management plans, strategies, I've always done it like this, is we put the road down, then we run it until it starts to create potholes, and then we go, ooh, what happened there? We've not maintained it. So what we're going to show you today are some of the techniques that we can use, and that we'd encourage you to go back to your highway authorities and ask them about what they're doing about these types of preservations. Because what we can do is we can extend the life of the road by up to 10 years through a couple of interventions at a fraction of the cost of filling potholes in all the time. So Mike.
So yeah, and the reason why we're trying to shout about this, because the data's telling us there's been a real sort of shift in the use of some of these treatments. So surface dressing, which we'll come on to in a minute, is one of those treatments. Now, back in 2012, the use of those were about 64 million square metres, and industry experts are telling me that once upon a time that was 90 million square metres. In 2023, that was down to about 35 million. So we're almost about a third of the use of what was once upon a time being used in the industry. And that tells you that huge shift has moved away from preventative to end of life, and at end of life you get lots of potholes. So it all sort of explains what's going on here. If you look at the DFT returns, work done, the number of authorities still recording nothing preventative maintenance, whether that's surface dressing, preservation, or microsurfacing. So it all points to the fact that pothole numbers are increasing. That's a chart taken from the Asphalt Industry Alliance, their alarm survey. And you can see there was a spike in 2023 in the number of potholes. And the same reports, and this all comes from data from local authorities, every pothole repair, if it's planned, it's probably about £51. Does that take into account overheads and traffic management? Probably not. Up to reactive, which is about £80. In London, it's about 120, I think it is in London. So these are huge costs. So for very small cost, we recommend that you apply these sort of treatments that are going to stop all these potholes forming. And we talk a lot about cost, but one of the things we can also compare is their carbon as well, because these surface treatments are significantly lower carbon. And many authorities have declared climate emergencies. You have your associated carbon saving targets, and these treatments will actually support those strategies as well. So having done this, as Neil said, I've had 29 years in local authority maintenance. And this was a report I did in 2023 for our local councillors. So they wanted to understand that what were we doing already that makes a difference. So I said, well, initially we sort of said about costs. So all of the treatments that we were doing, and that was surface dressing, preservation, retexturing, microsurfacing, and in situ recycling, which you'll hear about in a moment. The cost of that programme of work was £5.1 million. Had we treated that same area of network using conventional asphalt inlay, the equivalent of in asphalt, it would have cost us 17.8 million. So you can see that by using these treatments, that money's going a lot further. You're treating more of your network. If you're only laying asphalt, you're only treating such a small proportion of your network. That's why everything else around it is continuing to deteriorate. You're missing that window of opportunity to treat it, and that's when potholes start to develop and you've lost it and you're into resurfacing. So when we did that, that was the financial side of it. But if we change the currency from pound sterling to carbon, we see the difference that makes there. So the same sort of programme, 780,000 kilograms. If we'd used asphalt, it's 4.4 million kilograms. So 82% saving. So when I say this works, okay, everybody who's come to Dorset, there was one senior officer from one local authority came to holiday in Dorset. I don't know if anybody's been to Dorset. Come to Dorset, this guy went back to his highways team and said, you need to go down and have a chat with Mike, because Mike's network is in really good condition. And this was a Dorset Echo who liked to bash the local authority on a regular basis. In December wrote an article about our road standards being the best in the country. And we can back that up with data that demonstrates this. So this works. We were spending about 40% of our road maintenance budget on preventative treatments, and that was having a significant difference. So the evidence is there, and so I talk from experience. There are other authorities that have done the same thing. So we've got lots of evidence, we've got lots of case studies, and this is where we're coming from with the RSTA, is we want to share these experience with authorities that are not using it, because some, we talk about the barriers, and some are saying they don't know enough about them, they're concerned that, you know, they're new, they haven't used them, they're not used. Some of these have been used for like 20 years, and they're still holding up, they're still performing. We've got the evidence that we can share. There's lots of testing, monitoring being done, and we can make that available for authorities so they can start to use these treatments with confidence.
Mike, I had a question earlier on from a gentleman. He asked me how long would a road typically last. So, do you want to give the example of the M40?
Yeah, so the M40...
Sorry, you can see now we're actually quite dull. We're actually talking about a road we get excited about.
I think the M40...
Did you actually think potholes was going to be this much fun?
Marvellous.
So I think the M40 is on the next slide. So if you go to the next slide, so we're talking about preservation and rejuvenation, okay? These are two very similar treatments. So these are spray-applied treatments, okay? So preventative, there's penetrative and non-penetrative. The penetrative one goes into the surface, it seals all the micro cracks, it provides a barrier on the top of the surface. Some talk about it like a sun cream almost. It's like a barrier to the UV light, exposure to the elements and trafficking. The rejuvenation is slightly different. It chemically modifies the binder to put it back to its original properties, so it sticks it back together. That again seals the surface, stops the water getting in, but what it does, it keeps that road in good condition for longer. So I had a formal complaint, a guy, we were treating his road, and he said there's worse roads, and I said, well, we've got two choices. It's in good condition now. If we do nothing, that road's going to start to crack, you'll start to see that open up, there's going to be potholes, it's going to fail. For very low cost, we can keep your road like it is now, and it will stay like that for 5-6 years, and then we retreat it again, and we keep maintaining that road for low cost in good condition. He retracted his complaint and wrote in to commend us on our approach to this, so that was a huge shift.
The young lady has another question.
Oh, sorry.
I'm a councillor with loads of problems about potholes, that's why I've got another question. Is there a particular type of machine that does this preservation?
So yeah, so the benefits of some of these treatments is they're very quick, so they don't cause the disruption that you get when you've got resurfacing, because you could have, everything from your planer, your sweeper, your lorries with all your material. Equally, lorries taking material away, so there's lots of materials. Preservation is just a sweeper and a spray tanker, effectively. And some of these can be done at night, so they're very low impact on the network. They don't cause the same level of disruption. So these are treatments that keep that road in as new condition, pretty much.
And
So
it won't come as a surprise to you that Lauren's got one.
So if we go on to the next slide, please, Neil.
And did you mention how long that road's been going for, the M40?
M40 is on the next one.
Oh, unfortunately. There she is.
So the M40, this is a section of road that was constructed in 2002, and ever since it was constructed, it's been treated with preservation treatment every 5 years. So that's now over 20 years old, still in as new condition. It's won 2 awards that are voted for by motorists for being one of the best roads in the UK. So if you can continue to maintain and treat that road in that condition, that's the optimum for me.
The question, I mean,
Sure.
it's a long road. Is it specific areas or is it long stretches of the M40?
So what we typically do, so what we did in Dorset, we actually mapped out, so as we laid a new surface, we would pencil in that first treatment, so we didn't miss it.
Yeah.
So typically about year 5, we would start looking at it year 4-5. If you wait until condition data tells you there's cracks in it, you've missed almost that first window for treatment, because a lot of the cracks that form are often in the material, they're micro cracks in the material.
Did you mean the M40 being the long road?
Yeah, the M40.
Yeah, what part of the M40 is that part that's been treated?
Oh, I haven't got that.
But you can see
this
here
is
that on the
case
left,
studies around it.
what they do to show is they deliberately leave an area. So they'll treat an area. You mentioned you had an area in Dorset that you treated, which looks like this all the way through it, and then you left an area
We
just
left
to,
a test section.
to compare contrast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's where the research comes. So you'll do a long run, and then you leave an area so that then you can see the performance of actually how the rejuvenation has worked compared to how you've left it. And the area that you've left in Dorset is now starting to fail, isn't it?
Yeah.
Same young
Yeah.
lady. Come and take a seat. Come on.
What I've noticed is moving on, we've got sort of narrowish road, but in the middle, that's where we get the potholes, that's where it kind of
In the
comes
middle?
together.
Yeah, so we had that conversation. So what happens in the middle, you've got your road surfacing, so the machine that lays the material is only sort of like the width of a lane.
It's
So
the width
what
of a
happens,
carriageway.
you get the joint between the two sections of material that they've laid, and that will be the first point of failure. So this is what we were doing in Dorset, is we would identify that site for treatment. We would seal the joint, so we'd do like a joint seal all the way through. If there were any localised areas that needed either patching or crack sealing, we would do that, and then we would apply the treatment over the top. And it would stay 5-6 years, and then we'd be looking to retreat it.
I just want to check she's not here. There was a lady just earlier on. Was the white line that we put down actually munching the asphalt because she thought that it was what caused the problem? It wasn't. It was because it's where the roads actually join. The machine is only carriageway width apart, so you end up with seals along them. It's like laying pieces of carpet, and then it's the join that's failing.
So we're increasingly starting to see, I mean, that 8140, that's another one. So that's a rejuvenation. So that's a very similar product, but that's over 20 years old now. The section that hasn't been treated has now been resurfaced by here. The section that had been treated is still in as new condition. So it just keeps it in good condition. So if you've got to a point where your preservation, you've looked at it and it's gone a bit beyond that, you've got a little bit more cracking in the surface, structurally the road is still sound, but you're looking at what else can we do on it. So this is where we move into surface dressing. So surface dressing is the black sticky stuff that you spray on the road, and then you apply the chippings on top of it. And you typically you leave it a little bit of time to get the embedment from the traffic travelling over it. And everybody talks about, okay, this is part of rural treatment, we don't like the loose chippings. So there's been huge developments in these materials now. You know, the binders are a lot more able to hold onto the aggregate. But the biggest development is these encapsulation systems that we now spray over the top. And that now, not only does it lock the chips down so you don't have the loose chippings, but it looks like a conventional asphalt. You know, we've had, in the past, lots of complaints about surface dressing. In last year, we encapsulated every single site in Dorset. I didn't get one single complaint about surface dressing. And some of my colleagues in other authorities, one's a very urban authority, and he was taking that back into his own authority and said, we're going to start doing this around this city. And it was like, he was like really pushing the boundaries.
This is actually a great solution, isn't it, for public perception as well. So public will want a brand new road. They want you to come in, take out what's ready, put a new road down. That's not physically possible, financially viable, and structurally not required, because the structural integrity of the road is 9 times out of 10 still there. So all we're doing is, if you think of a Christmas cake, this is effectively putting a new layer of marzipan over the Christmas cake. And so from a public perception, they've got a new road. It looks brand new, got new lines on it. What we've actually done is we've sealed the road that's underneath it, we've protected it, but also made it look like a brand new road at the same time. And so from the people that live in your area, they think they've got a brand new road, you've given them the perception that they wanted, but from a structural perspective as well, you've protected your asset, you've maintained your asset at the same time. Dual benefit on there, yes.
So I'm a county councillor. I live in a rural area, but I'm a town councillor as well. But one thing from the surface dressing on rural roads is the water tends to get in under it. And is that resolvable? Because we've had roads surface dressed by us, and what would you say the last 10 years before they start putting up with it?
Yeah, so I mean, drainage, water is the enemy of your road. So you need to maintain your drainage. That's one of the key things that I learned 30 years ago when I came into highways. You need to keep the water off the road. You need to drain your roads well. So keep your drains, your gullies, ditches, grips. You need to keep them clear and running to get the water off. And you need to seal your roads early. However you do it, seal your roads and stop the water getting in. So, I mean, if you've got any capital programme, because a lot of revenue's tight, so you use revenue money to empty your gullies, dig your ditches and grips. But what we were doing is when we were doing these programmes of work, capital funded, we would do the drainage when we were there. So typically we would do full drainage surveys right to the nearest outfall. We would dig ditches, dig the grips, because it's essential you get the water off. So you've got that opportunity to capitalise that work while you're doing these schemes. But if I could just draw your attention to the cost here. So surface dressing typically is about £4 to £6. It's going to depend on a lot of factors, the size of the programme, etc. But typically about £4 to £6 a square metre. Inlaying that 40 mil of asphalt, just that surface course, is about £20 a square metre. Now the life you'll get out of those two materials is exactly the same. It's 10 to 15 years typically, depending on how much traffic you can have on it. Okay, so why would you pay £20 when you can pay a fraction of that for surface dressing?
And the other thing as well is if you do surface dress a road, we'll come to you, sir. If you do surface dress a road, it isn't a one-off treatment. You can then over surface dress your surface dressing, and you can keep building layers up. Probably about 3 times, then you take it all off. But then you're 15, 20 years down the line, and you've had some fantastic value. Yes, sir.
Yeah, would you agree that the sort of surface dressing where they put a little bit of binder and then a load of chippings and they go all over the place, that's a bad way of doing it? I think it's awful.
Yeah, and that's where, you know, we offer CPD training for both, you know, operatives and for officers, so they can calculate the optimum levels of binder and chippings. But yeah, I mean, typically they're over chipped. But they are swept afterwards to make sure anything that hasn't embedded is loose is removed.
If you're lucky, in Coventry on the road near me, it was left for over 12 months and the stuff was just going
12
everywhere.
months?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, good practice would be to sweep, you know, very soon after. I mean,
Within
you do
12
have
days.
To, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even I've heard up to like 2 days. If you could do the encapsulation, you normally do like 2 sweeps, a couple of days, and then you apply the encapsulation. So, you know, that kind of really sort of deals with the issue of these loose stones.
Just one other question, you may be dealing with this later. What do you do with a road, say like an A road, that's it's such that in a car you might hear a bit of noise, but it's fairly large pieces of chip that are protruding slightly all the way along, so that if you're on a bicycle it's a bit of a bone shaker and it just goes on for mile after mile. Do you know the chips are embedded in some sort of tarmac, but they're sort of 3/8, half an inch in diameter, these pieces of chipping, and they're sticking slightly above the surface, jutting out. And, you know, to vehicles, certainly lorries, they just wouldn't know. And if you ride a bicycle, as I do, it's really quite torturous. I mean, there's the A41 north of Wolverhampton going into Staffordshire that's like that for mile after mile.
Sometimes that's done for skid resistance.
Yeah.
So the way that skid resistance works is if you've got a jagged edge of the road, my finger's at the jagged edge, and then the rubber of the tyre breaks, it will catch on that and the friction will stop the vehicle. So it could be that that's what it's designed for, without seeing the
It's
side.
side of the road that it's worse.
Yeah, and that's where the other tyres haven't worn it down. But without seeing the site, it'd be hard to say.
Right.
So what we did some modelling over the longer term, like surface dressing, as a preventative maintenance strategy over an end-of-life strategy. And when we compared the two, the early life preventative strategy was 66% saving on cost over that 60-year period. And over that same period, there was about 75% carbon saving as well. And that is only the capital cost. That doesn't factor in all the cost of fixing potholes. So, you know, I think if there's an opportunity to apply some sort of surface treatment, surface dressing, do it and stop that getting to that point where you're into fixing potholes. So third option is microsurfacing. So this is a cold applied, effectively a thin surface overlay. And this typical example there where you've got a road, I mean this estate was built in the 60s, it's got a really solid base, very consolidated, structurally sound, but the thin veneer on the top has just scabbed off. So this was optimum time to get on it. Ideally we probably should have done it a couple of years earlier. But we got on it with a micro surface, and that will regulate all those minor surface defects. It will only do so much, so if you've got deep potholes, it's not going to fix those. But this will regulate out all the minor defects, seal the surface, and these are the treatments that you can use them on urban areas, but equally you can use them on high-speed roads as well. There are particular products that you can use on high-speed roads. So when you're sort of paying that sort of fee, £7 to £10 a square metre, why would you pay £20 a square metre when you'll get the same life out of these treatments? So it makes sense to treat your roads, and you know we had some great examples in Dorset. So the road, you've missed all those opportunities to do all these treatments, and now your road's in really, really poor condition. And I've had somebody say to me today, why do we see roads that are full of potholes and some have got circles round and some haven't? Well, some authorities, we know they're tight on revenue budgets, so they will fix the ones that are actionable, like more than 40 mil in debt, for example, and they won't treat the one next to it because they can't afford to. So what we're trying to say is, well, rather than keep fixing those potholes, because that's not a permanent solution, you know, you could resurface it, but again, it's going to cost you a lot of money to treat some of those roads. Those are some significant fails in that there's probably not enough construction in that material. So what we're looking at is methods of recycling. So rather than resurfacing, think about in situ recycling as an example, is where the machine pulverizes all the existing material. It basically then you add a binder to it, so that might be a bituminous material, it might be cement, and you then form that solid base that then you put a new surface on. So you're not taking any waste away, you're repurposing all the existing material to form that base, and then you could put a double surface dressing over the top of that to seal it off. And that again, really low cost compared to doing conventional like reconstruction effectively. And again, half the carbon as well. So why not think about some of these sort of like recycling treatments?
That can be good if you've got the water problem as well, can't it?
Yeah, because
really
typically they
starts
would factor that into how much cement they're going to put into it if you've got a really wet area, so that might just make it a little bit more robust. So, you know, these are, certainly that one is one in Dorset that we did, and we double dressed that, and these are all evolved from tracks effectively in Dorset. We've got lots of roads with no construction, lots of heavy agricultural vehicles on them, and by doing this, we're building that construction into it so we can take those heavy vehicles without deforming the material at all.
So somebody asked me earlier on, they said that they keep getting in the same place, a rut developing, they keep throwing more asphalt over it, but the road keeps sinking. Well, because that's a reason, because the structural integrity of the road underneath has failed somewhere. It might have been washed away over a period of time with undersurface water. So then you have these types of structural geosynthetics and meshes, which actually give you some greater structural integrity to put back into the road surface as well. That can prevent slips and falls and deformation as well in wet areas. So we see these sometimes built in as part of reconstruction jobs as well, so that we can maintain that structural integrity when we're then going to retreat the top of it, and that will stop potholes from forming as well when we're reconstructing the road.
So this is my pet hate. This is temporary repairs where you only do the temporary repair. And I know why authorities do it, because they have these 7 days they've got to fix the pothole, so they'll go in, a shovel full of asphalt, get that done within 7 days, don't follow it up. And then next month the inspector goes out and he finds the next one. And in that example over there, we've got sort of like 15 subsequent repairs. I think we've got potholes on potholes sort of thing. And it's just a very temporary approach, but some authorities are doing this as an absolute minimum and not doing that permanent follow-up. So this was something that I had conversations in my own authority about our approach to this, and we moved to this, like, do the initial fix, keep it safe by all means, but do the follow-up permanent repair. And if you're doing planned works, it's always a lot cheaper than doing reactive works, because it costs a lot more to send the guys out for 7 days to get the work done than it does to have. I mean, nowadays, with all the technology that you've got at your disposal, you can identify these defective areas, almost do some route optimization and send the guys out and do these type of permanent repairs. And there's lots of different methods. It's not just now conventional, there's spray injection, you've got thermal patching, there's the thermoplastic material, there's all sorts of things that we're now sort of doing as well. So lots of options, but get it done once and for all. But if you've got some fails like this, but that material is uniformly starting to go in the same direction, do your patching and then do one of your treatments and seal it off, and you're not going to then see those recurring areas of failure that you need to go back and patch.
We chatted earlier when you asked me about some of the patches that are failing after about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and that would have been these types of things. This is what we call splat and pat. We just splat it down, pat it down, and it's just making the road safe to drive over as a temporary fix. But then, as Mike says, that will then just need cutting out and then a proper patch putting in its place. That's what good looks like. If your roads have failed, then somebody needs to come back and put it together. If you're seeing that, that's just a temporary one, but sometimes the temporary ones are just being left as semi-permanent, and that's why they keep refailing.
So this was an example. Shropshire Council won an award where they moved from 90% temporary repairs to 90% permanent repairs, and in doing that they saved 1.4 million a year. their public satisfaction went up 25%, and their backlog of potholes reduced significantly. So it just shows the positive effect of doing those permanent repairs. Yes?
So we have huge issues with semi-permanent repairs in my division. But what's the kind of time differential? Because I think, like you said, there's that pressure to get them to do in a certain amount of time. So I'm not going to say which local authority, but the local authority that I'm a councillor for, they tell us they're the fourth best in the country at pothole repairs. I don't think they are, because there seems the same potholes pop back out again. But I think it means for us. I don't know, they must have some league table that they found that says they're the fourth best.
They're the fourth best.
Yeah.
But what happens is you get these temporary fixes, tick a box to say they've completed the defect within their timescales.
Yeah.
So they say, we're performing really well. We've been there, my authority, we've been there where we're like, well, you know, we're fixing 90% of our defects within the time. But if you're not doing it properly, you're back next month doing it. So when you start looking at how many times you're going back, repeat defects. So what we're trying to say is, you know, Shropshire, great example, totally flipped that on its head, permanent repairs, and they saved a lot of money and doing a lot better job of it.
I know we're in a football stadium, but I've never heard of a pothole Premier League, have you?
Apparently.
No.
Is that?
That's told by the Tories.
Yeah, well, I mean, that on the basis of that, it'd be interesting to understand, is that their reactive side in how
That's what I
quickly
was
they're
thinking,
getting out,
yeah.
or is it the longevity of the patching that they're doing? So that's why we're coming to now talk to councillors to give them this advice, so they go back and they can ask more, you know, pertinent questions, really, I suppose.
I mean, I live in Shropshire, and they've gone back to the temporary method, or at least it feels like they have. But they do these permanent repairs, and they don't last either. They look like permanent solid and square top.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, the permanent repair, I mean, if they're not lasting, then you've got to look at workmanship or what materials they're using, have they used the right materials? Is it, if you've got like a very wet area, for example, ultimately, like we said earlier on, deal with the cause of it to start with. You know, if you've got very poorly maintained drainage, deal with that, stop the water from forming on the road, because that is going to attack, whether it's a patch or existing asphalt, that is going to accelerate the rate of deterioration.
If they're not cleaning their gullies, like the drains, I mean, how many times you go across the road and you look down at the drain and it's got weeds growing out of it, or it's all, you can't even see down into the drain. Well, that means all of the surface water is then running down the road, not going into the drain. And to the lady at the front's point, that then sinks into the road, everything cracks again. So, and it also, we talked about the contract that your authority might have with its maintenance contractor. The gentleman at the front was talking about a particular problem he's got in his area with his contractor and his constructor, and there's some real issues there as well. So it may not be the process, it may not even be the workmanship, it could be secondary issues that are going on. And this is part of the problem that we've got with so many local authorities maintaining so many roads, that the standards, the contracts, the materials, the topography are all different. But as the public, we just see a road. We just want to drive on a road that you don't go down potholes, and it's got white lines on it, it's got road signs on it. That's all we want. But because of the intricacies of the funding mechanisms and the different maintenance contractors, and the terms, and the different pressures of social budgets, this is why we get this patchwork quilt of highways around the UK as you drive around them. We're just trying to explain and give that advice to you. You can go back and try to ask the question on what's our drains like? Are we cleaning our drains? Are we cleaning our gullies? Because if we're not, then this is the effect it's having on the road. Yes, sir.
I think the strange thing for us is, so I'm from Staffordshire, and in Staffordshire we've got a contract with our company, and trying to hold them to account with that company. Once they've got it, then getting them to kind of look after it and do the right job. Like I think you mentioned, we've had lots of repairs done recently that look like the ones to the right, but are actually acting like the ones to the left. They're not being sealed very well, they don't last very long. You hold them to account, try and get them, but they don't turn up for another 6 months to even look at a job that they've done a week ago. And I've had one done outside my shop and it's lasted a week.
Well, Mike will tell you what he used to do when he used to bring his contractor back. If you had a contractor as the local authority who's gone and done a job for you and it's failed, you would have your contractor back to relook.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's reliant on having somebody that does that. The problem that I have in my county, I haven't got someone that does that. You raise it and it takes months to get an answer. And by the time you get an answer, it gets worse. And this isn't your problem. The solution you've come forward to is absolutely great. great, but it's not the experience as a councillor you always have. You're relying on so many tiers of communication to even get an answer, to get something fixed, to get to a solution. I've got a road that's like that one to the side there that the county council has deemed irreparable. And because it's irreparable, they will only do temporary pothole fixes and they will only guarantee them for 6 months. When I pushed them on when they're going to repair this irreparable road, they told me it wouldn't be any quicker than 10 years.
So why wouldn't you go back to it if it's that irreparable? I talk about in situ recycling.
Exactly the point.
It's 15 to 16 pound a square metre to do. I mean, you could do different depths. You could do an 80 mil. If you've got 80 mil of material, you could recycle that. You could even go deeper to 150, 300. You know, there's lots of different things you can do. Obviously, the deeper you go, the more cost. But the treatment's got to be appropriate to the road it's on. So if it's a minor road, I would still think we were doing a lot of minor roads where there was no construction, it's failing structurally, it's deformed, and we wouldn't try and fix potholes. We would go and do something like
as a councillor, we've got other barriers. So, for example, our barrier to this is the contractor that's doing it. It's got a contract for a long period of time. We can't pick and choose to go somewhere else. We can't get somebody else to do it, so we have to follow their advice. The advice they're giving us is poor. Then where do you go? But it's difficult.
But I would say that we're trying to make the client more informed. So we're trying to share information, make sure the client fully understands what options they got, because a contractor will do whatever the client has asked them to do. So I don't know the arrangement of the contract details, but typically whatever arrangement you've got, that client will specify exactly what they want. You'll agree end performance. There's lots of stuff like that, like in the British standards. And these things should be lasted. So I mean that comes down to a conversation with the client and the contractor, really.
We're happy to see if we can help you with advice you might need for certain instances.
It's about knowledge, isn't it? Because you repair potholes, so I don't know the questions to ask. I don't know the techniques to go. So having that.
Yeah, and that's why we're coming into these environments to talk to people that are the portfolio holders and the councillors that are then going back to the local authorities, so that we're giving you the answers, the questions, and the information to have the discussion about. There is a book that we put together called Curing Pothole Britain, which you can either take a printed copy of us today, or you can get that from the website. If you go onto the Keeley website, we're going to also have this presentation on the website for Monday, Lauren, aren't we? So that will be up there. So if you'd like to go on there and pull this down as well, then you can do that as well. But other than that, I'm conscious that we were started late, but try and finish you on time at 4 o'clock. If you've got any other questions, please do come and chat to us at the end. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to meet you all, and see you soon.